Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of What They Don't Tell You About Crypto. Together with Jack, we're going to dive into some information about how to plug in your business into the Web3 fast. And is it overall needed? And what are the concepts people can use for their business to become more profitable, become more engaging, and overall bring more value to the companies? So I'm Marius. I'm a VP of Web3 Engineering in Saakuru Labs. And together with me is Jack.
Hey guys, I'm Jack and I'm a co-founder and CEO of Saakuru Labs. Good to be here and let's discuss some interesting topics.
This episode is dedicated to people who are actually a little bit aware of what values and what qualities can blockchain bring to their businesses. We want to undo the damage done by some fancy blockchain speakers in the conferences. And we want to simplify the whole concept of plugging in business on the blockchain and deploying the business on the blockchain. And we want to show that it's actually much simpler and much less friction than a lot of people believe. And another thing what we want to explore is a lot of people in Europe don't understand the scale of Web3 adoption around the world. And just some simple facts. From the investor standpoint, that the global blockchain market size was projected to grow from approximately 3 billion in 2020 to over 39 billion in 2025. And what we see that like the blockchain market and the crypto market especially decoupled from the stock market within the last couple of months, and it's starting to get more and more traction. But blockchain is much more than a crypto market. And let's dive into how it can be used to create better user experiences and create more value for the business.
Yeah, so like Mary said, I think there's a lot of misconception about blockchain, and because it seems like everyone thinks is something that's very difficult, and costly. It needs different kind of developers to really get things going. And based on my experience, all it takes is you work with some good developers. Need to know what are the problems you have in your business and how Web3 can become a solution, right? Blockchain in a way is just a new technology that can potentially help solve problems, or maybe even can allow people to innovate on new ways to do things. For example, customer experience and investment opportunity and all sorts of things, right? So I think, I'm calling it undo things that people say at conferences. I think there's definitely some merit to that, because a lot of time people make this grand scheme, like new ideas, where they make it sound so big that it's not practical for a regular business. Think of it like if you have a supermarket, right? What can a Web3 do for you? And you would never think of you'll be able to do it if you go to these conferences. So I think if we can kind of demystify this a little bit and break it down on how to go from 0 to even 0.1, right? Take a small step at a time to see and then explore and really experiment, because I think 2024 is going to be about experimentation, right? People are going to be like, hey, okay, now that maybe with account abstraction, with some of this concept, things going to be a little bit easier for onboard user. And there are so many different platforms now that you can deploy smart contract for free. So with a bit of tooling, a bit of, refining ideas that we have seen in the past, hopefully there'll be a lot more adoption and more willingness to jump in, especially when it's become easier and easier. The problem with blockchain right now is everyone, talk about crypto NFT, right? Because, those guys are the loudest, because people brag about making money, losing money sometimes, and the news keep talking about Bitcoin price going like skyrocketed and then crashing down, all these things. And that's mostly what people hear, right, when they turn on the news. But they don't hear that, someone went shopping and then had this brand new experience, because in the end, blockchain is just in the background, right? When you do it right, it does not become visible to people, right? Maybe you have to download a wallet, which to a regular consumer, it's just another app, right? They can store, let's say, this membership card as an NFT, but that's it. So it's going to be interesting, and it's going to take I don't think it's going to be on the education side. It's going to be more on the experience side. Really get someone to try something out, go shopping, and then all of a sudden they now can get all this experience that typically only available for luxury brands, now down to fast fashion, and then they can get a similar experience or even better, right? Connecting more businesses together, because now you don't have permission. You don't need to ask for permission to integrate. Anyone can just like, hey, okay, you have this NFT for, let's say, New York City. I want to provide some kind of benefit and experience. Then you tap into it and just become part of the community in a way. I think that's the part that's going to be huge if people do it. I mean, if we or anyone else can do it right.
Yeah, really. Like, I think the blockchain passed the first stage of development where everyone just tried to make blockchain scalable and accessible. And right now, when it's scalable and it's accessible, everyone is like, what the hell do we do with this? Like, because we just literally for like 10 years, we talked about how this is going to change the world, and just nothing's happening. Like, maybe some couple of games deployed their assets on top of the blockchain. Maybe we heard some, like big insurance companies deploying their internal blockchains on a hyperledger, and like, but actually in the real world, like, nothing beside the crypto hype, nothing is happening. So the use cases you see as an opportunity. So I throw one use case, you throw one use case, and then we just explore how it can be done and what are the benefits for the business to actually implement that use case on the blockchain. So do you have any use case to start?
I mean, let's first start, I would say, education, right? I mean, I used to be a teacher. I was teaching kids from like, how old was my youngest student? 7, I think. And my oldest student was like 23. So I think there's a lot that can be done in education. And in this case, I think it also has to be top down. I mean, there's a lot of benefits, right? And when I talk about education, let's focus more on the certification part, right? I mean, of course, there's going to be education on the Web3 side about, okay, how it's going to benefit you, all these things. But again, like I said, if you do things right, it should benefit you and not really become a burden, right? It's not something that people will be like, oh, now I have to learn Web3. Certification is one of those areas. And if you think about it, I mean, the reason that a platform like LinkedIn is popular is because it's easy to go glance from the top to bottom. You know exactly what it looks like. If you want to take a look at, let's say, what was the last position for this person, which company this person was working for, which university this person graduated from, it's very easy, right, to look. And now, the problem there is that there's a lot of fraud, especially in Southeast Asia. People just fake their credential because they can. Because, I mean, even when I interview people, I don't call up university and say, hey, did person this really go to this university, right? So that's problematic, and it costs a lot of money because the cost of onboarding that person to the company, to find out this person doesn't really have that skill, doesn't have the experience. It costs a lot of money, and I think it can be easily solved, right? And if we really follow through the way things work with like LinkedIn, I think there should not really be a single application that's siloed. Like there's all these different standards like open badges where, I mean, being used to solve this problem, right? At least it's standard. But the problem is there's like, I think 39 different systems right now that support it, and everything's siloed, right? And they say, hey, let's use OAuth, because now if you in this system, you want data from the system, you can connect and you can transfer your badge and all these things. But I mean, but still, it doesn't solve the problem, right? And I think this is one area where blockchain can help, because everything become public, right? And then of course we have to work on the privacy part where, I mean, if you don't want to be exposed, then you don't expose yourself. But at least anyone can verify that this person did this, and this, right? Because it's all public information. Yeah. So I think that's one area that I'm quite excited about. It's definitely not very exciting if you talk about, I mean, how people talk about conference, like, hey, I like talk about new math formula for this DeFi platform and new way to do these things. This is like down at the bottom, right? Of the exciting thing that you
do the work. Like, this is where you need to sit down, do the work, and no one will ever recognize that.
Yeah.
But it's actually super
thing, because I mean, it's again, the whole point is that we're trying to solve a problem, right? And there's like this problem right in front of us, and everyone recognizes it. I mean, when we talk to Department of Higher Education in certain countries like that in the past year, I mean, we did not bring up this. They were the one asking, like, oh, I heard blockchain can do this. Can you solve this for us, right? So, yeah, I think that's one area I think is going to be an interesting one in 2024.
Okay, yeah, so we can actually even dive in and into this one, and let's try to break it down into like really easy steps on what can be done to change education. And we can go to the level of just what smart contract we need, how that's going to be accessible. Because the thing I'm I'm a blockchain developer. So I know that with one smart contract, with one well-developed smart contract, you can actually have as much functionality from the data standpoint as the large systems has. Because, to blockchain by design, if you code smart contract functions, you can have the function which is for storing specific type of data. You can have functions for aggregating data. You can have functions for getting the data in the specific manner. And when you are running the normal system, when you're running a normal system, what you usually need is way more complex than just a simple code. You need a services which needs to be maintained. You need a database which needs to be maintained. Also, for example, to even achieve the very simple functionality, you need at least a dozen of different endpoints to store data, to record data, to get data, all this. So you still need to code all that interface. And you also, on top of that, you need a monitoring system which monitors that those services are always accessible. So let's try to take this information and let's try to drill into, let's say, how can we fix the LinkedIn fraud? Because I've read even a couple of very interesting articles before, like it's FBI and there's massive finance complaints about thousands of people faking their education identities. And I don't know if someone is working. I've tried to find some research about if people are working on that or not, but it doesn't seem to be that everything works. And it should be really easy to fix.
Yeah, I mean, it should be. And I think the key point is that it needs to be verifiable by anyone, right? Because the moment you have to trust one system, how do you know that system is also not faking the data, right? For example, I mean, I can write all this data on chain, right? Let's say my records on chain that I went to, let's say University of Wisconsin-Madison, which I went to. But what if I want to fake it and I say I went to Harvard, right? I can write my own app to go and read the data, but I don't show you the data that was actually on chain, right? It's actually show the data I want you to see, which does not solve the problem. So now, if you don't have a system you can trust or an application you can trust, you can build yourself, right? The whole point is that it's open, it's verifiable, and if you really want to, you can easily go and do it yourself, right? So it really have to make people think twice about committing fraud of this nature, because I mean, you can do all these things, but people are like, hey, but I can do this myself. Like, let's say in the future, there's a quick way to read any data on chain, right? Which I guess there already is. But in this case, it could be encrypted and it's private information only. But in this case, right, if we set up right, I mean, let's say I'm talking to you face to face, or maybe even online. I can request you like, hey, can you essentially allow me to view the information on chain, right? Yeah. So it's permission. But at the same time, I do not need to use the application or the one you recommended. I can use my own. So I mean, it's actually quite complex when privacy come into play, right? And then also it's very possible that a certification will issue. Let's say the diploma will issue, right? But then it also got revoked, and this happened all the time, because especially when a lot of time you don't get the test result until much later, right? So you have this piece of paper already, because people want to go home. They want to basically close down university for the summer break, right? So you go through this, and sometimes you actually get a piece of paper already, and then you found out 3 months later that you did not pass. I actually had a friend who actually came back to school. I was like, I went to your graduation. I thought you like going back to Hawaii. They were, and she's like, no, I failed math. Right? So it does happen, and so there has. And still, I mean, I don't think putting everything on chain will solve the problem. I mean, you will still have to think about all the different flow, all these exception cases. So,
but does education certification needs to be private? Like, in a way, I think that's like more of the moral and the privacy question. But I think especially in the labor market, where everyone is anyway like needs to reveal their public information and educational information to the company they want to get the contract. They still need to reveal all that information anyways. So
it depends on how we do it, right? Because if we segment information into, let's say, I mean, I'm going to use a wallet term now, right? So if you segment them correctly, right, where information are siloed and for different purposes. And I'm like, for example, I mean, our Saakuru app, right? You can basically our solution can verify data across all these different wallets at the same time. But when you only use one single wallet and you have everything inside, right? You end up doxing yourself because you may have in financial transaction, you can have certification, you have maybe sometimes even like country like Sweden, for example, where literally your income is online for everyone to see, right? So if that policy apply, now if you put on that chain, it become a danger for yourself, right? There was a guy that basically got his house raided by some random people because people found out that he made a few $1 million like the year before, right? So in Sweden, that information is all public. Now, if the information about the address is also all public, then that's become a problem, right? So I think there has to be a very smart way and like really thought out ways of how to segment all this data. If certain part of the data must be public, right? So that and that's why, I mean, certification itself, of course, it doesn't matter, right? You can see where I went to school and all those things, but when it tied to other pieces of information, that's when it gets more complex.
Okay, cool. I think the big friction for like a lot of those institutions, because anyway, this needs to be institutionalized, like information about education needs to be like managed by the government in a sense. I think the big friction why the government hasn't moved that direction is because the government does not want to maintain their own public blockchain, and that other blockchains by design, they're not very user friendly, and like you need to like have an educational journey to even start using the blockchain, and then you need like the like
gas fee costing too much, and there's many other issues. Yeah, for sure.
So what about like, what do you think about account as abstraction, which is like becoming more popular in a way? And
account abstraction only solve problem to a certain extent, right? I mean, it's good that someone can subsidize the gas fee. There's a limit-based policy to help with security. It's easier to connect to the wallet. You don't need seed phrase and all these things. But I mean, that's only solve partial problem, really. I mean, there's still quite a lot of work that needs to go on top. Like even subsidizing gas fee, right? I mean, what if the developer can't afford it? Like the model that we have right now, where everyone pays for their own gas fee, works out better for developer because what if there's a spike in the demand, right? We technically could completely wipe out the game because if you're the one who have to subsidize, and let's say you have $10,000 worth of ETH or whatever currency that is the base currency, right? And there's a spike and that runs out. What happens? Right. So now maybe the user have to pay their own gas fee, but then all of a sudden they have the experience not paying gas fee, then they have to pay gas fee, and it's just a mess. So I mean, technically there should be a way to just abstract that part completely out, and the way we do it, I think, is much better, but it may not be possible for like a fully public chain that's not permission chain, for example. So I think that's why there's like people say like the blockchain trilemma, right? You have to strike the balance between all like security and basically scalability on all these things. So I think it comes down to, again, when you think about a solution, right? Which blockchain can suit you the best? And I think it really comes down to that. And there are definitely cases where, like, let's say using something like Polygon makes sense, but then there are going to be cases like for gaming, for example, where Polygon doesn't make sense. It's not scalable. It costs too much money eventually. I mean, bull run's coming. All of a sudden, gas fees spike, and the game that's playable is no longer playable. So it's going to be really interesting to see like where people really use account abstraction. I don't think people talk about it enough, right? People think that this is the solution, but I don't think it is. It's a starting point for sure.
So I think we can go ahead and close this first part of the first segment. It's more about blockchain integration into education system. And what we've done, we've just drilled down into certification issue, like fraud issue on LinkedIn. So to finalize that, maybe we can go through the steps and we can break it down how we can build. So imagine some USA government comes and says, Jack, we need to fix this problem. Like, can you just simplify it for us because we don't understand anything about it? We have a brain of the 5 years old. So we need to understand what are the 3 easy steps we can do. What tools do we need to use? What smart contracts we need? What system we need? And we want it dumb way.
Okay, I mean, first, I guess just use our solution. But anyway, so if they want to build themselves, right? I mean, first, I would say just pick a chain, and I think they just have to decide whether they can go for fully public, which I think that makes sense, a lot of sense. That's why Polygon is also preferred by like educational institution, right? And there are essentially two parts. The first part is issuing of the certification. The second part is verification. I mean, that's basically that, right? And then I think going forward, the concept of open badges and all these different certification is more like micro achievement, right? And we can call it more achievement than certification as well, because I mean, technically, when you receive a diploma from a university, tell you that you graduate from this university, these are your majors, right? But it doesn't tell you anything beyond that. And that's why typically when you look at resume, you see leadership section, you see volunteer section, you see student organization, all those things. I mean, many people who really involved and have what I would say like a very involved experience in college could end up with 100 to maybe even 300 different badges, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it is more than just helping preventing fraud and make it more transparent. It's actually also help employers to really use it as filter, right? Because I mean, think of it this way: all these badges have metadata, and then if anyone searching specifically for education or for job search and tap into all this data, I mean, that's a wealth of data.
It allows even more opportunities because you can build up like a score system. So for example, I was not like, honestly, I was not a really good student in the university because like I had other priorities in the life back then. But I think that would be even motivational because you will know that if your education is public and if every subject you will learn will give you a badge, and that badge will eventually be calculated into the total score of your education, and that will be accessible by your potential employee to overview. Do you have already a knowledge about specific skill set? You know, like because the world, like a work employment market is like demands really different skills. So if you can overview if those skills were actually learned by the employee you might potentially hire, that could lead you to the better decision making when you're hiring person.
Yeah, and it's a lot to do with gamification as well, right? I mean, let's say volunteer is something that our leadership skill are things that you look at, right, or look for. Like for example, with if you want to apply for McKinsey and Company, if you don't have leadership skill, very hard to get, especially if your grade is like not like close to 4.0, right? So, then our university can just say, hey, you can go and get this badge, or student organization can say, hey, go collect trash from the street, right? And you can get this badge as someone who actually care about the city, community, environment, and so on and so forth. And these days, people love this kind of stuff. They're trained by Apple, right? You have all these badges. It's trained by Xbox and PlayStation. People trying to get all these achievements, even though they don't mean anything in the game, right? Yeah. But people is like a bragging right. Some of them are very difficult to get, of course. But sometimes it's just even small things that really show, like, let's say I volunteered 50 times, right? I can be recognized for that as well. And sometimes they even send recognition, right? For example, in like for New York City Marathon, you actually have to go and do all sorts of activities to be recognized, right? So now, if let's say you've done something that were not previously recognized by the committee, then you'll be like, hey, but these are the records, and these are of certain types. It's a volunteer experience. I did this and this and this, right? So I think it just become it is something that now I think can be provided without being stuck by some other system, right? In some way, anyone can now come up with this, right? And put into this public database for anyone else to see.
Yeah.
So again, you no longer have to be that giant company where, hey, everyone use my certification system. Now I can be, let's say, a small nonprofit organization who's trying to drive engagement and activities and all the goodness that they do, right? And somewhat in some way incentivize people to come and do it because, hey, I can show my kids that I did this and this and this, like, right? So
okay, so I want to, for ending of this, I want to give a little bit of my, as a developer perspective, how I would do it, because it's actually really easy. Okay, I'm overusing the word easy. It's not complicated to achieve this. to, this is like like a swear word in our company, easy, because like eventually nothing is easy. It's just either you have enough skill to do it or no. So to achieve this certification, what you only need is a smart contract of around 200-300 lines. And eventually that smart contract should issue ERC 71 tokens, NFTs, which have this, each NFT will have a specific configuration. So what it can have in what area that achievement is, what that achievement, like maybe specific ID, which can link you to the like larger reference database of what that achievement is. And we can add some fancy images on top of that, etc. Then you need a permission logic where those parties who has an allowance or permissions to issue those badges can issue the badges to the specific wallets addresses. So that's pretty much all you need, honestly, from the smart contract perspective. And you need some like query functions which allows you to grab that data based on specific identifier like a wallet address, ID, or maybe some specific category. So it's actually not very complicated smart contract. On top of that, you need a good data aggregator, which is one of the things which we work on Saakuru Labs, and we have the capability to read data from any smart contracts from the blockchain very, very quick. Though I do think we need to eliminate gas fees, and I think that's ideal solution we have as a Saakuru blockchain. It's scalable. It doesn't need gas fees, so you can implement it in the way to your application, but it's not even visible that it's a blockchain, because the same transaction can be just a save button. It's almost real time, so you will not need to wait for a long time comparing to other blockchains, which has like 2 seconds confirmation time for some of the blocks. So you can just save, confirm. A user immediately receives the badge. That badge can be cell-bound. So you will never be able to like remove it from the wallet. So it will be forever bounded to the wallet address or to the account. User doesn't need to know that he's using the wallet address. And you need some like couple of endpoints for different systems to read and verify. But all that can be customized. So it's more about building the reference database than actually building the technical solution, because blockchain automatically solves the scalability issues of the large systems. So the company who is maintaining blockchain, so in case of the Saakuru, it's us, we are responsible for accessibility and for maintenance of RPC and all those technicalities. So as a company, you don't need to like buy expensive infrastructure and pay to expensive developers to maintain all of that. Cool. Jack, are you not tired?
A bit. It's like 1 a.m., but the usual.
Okay. Yeah, you're quite a night owl, honestly. So I have another topic which I want to discuss with you.
Sure.
How about loyalty points on chain and putting different loyalty and gamification systems on top of the chain?
Yeah, I mean, loyalty system is actually very, very hard to design, even in Web2, right? I mean, my background came from retail. And I spent about 7 years building. How many did I build? I built 4 different CRM, I think, during that stretch. And it's quite interesting. I mean, you can take a look at some example of what people are doing right now, like Flipkart, right? They're actually using NFT to not eliminate, but trying to get the points off their book, right? So because typically with all these loyalty points, it stay on your book, and when you do financial, all these things, it become a liability in a way, right? So what they do now is they allow people to go and mint NFT using these loyalty points, so that these, at least part of it, now become NFT, which is not really recognized by anyone as anything except being a collectible or a badge, right? So there's a lot of people now going in this direction. And I heard 3 or 4 cases so far, but I think Flipkart in India is probably the biggest. In terms of points, it's quite interesting, right? Because and I mean, for people who don't know, there's 2 types. I mean, when you mint certain token, there's a max limit, like our token, for example, or there's certain token which has no limit, like Ethereum or a few other one, like, I mean, SLP from Axie Infinity also didn't have limit until last week, right? So the problem with loyalty point, if you use it for business and where it's pegged to something of, let's say, 1 cent each, right? It's easier to understand. The thing is, when it comes to become on-chain asset and you allow people to trade, right? And you no longer can control. People would just take this point and do whatever they want. So the price could go up really high, could go down. So I think loyalty in Web3 is one of those areas where there need to be some like serious research. Using NFT right now is the simpler solution, and it's really it basically to satisfy cases like what people call token gating. All right, so if you have this NFT, you have access or benefit to this and that, and then you can basically keep compounding, right? And the whole point about NFT is also is when people say it's upgradable, it's because you can change the metadata, right? So as you participate in, let's say with this brand, it can go from level 1, level 2, level 3, and so it's kind of mimic the existing system. Like for example, with the MGM brand, right, at the casino where I also did work on CRM, on hotel booking and stuff. They had like 5 different tiers. So we can also mimic that, but now it's become much more transparent, right? And another good point about points on chain is that no one can take it away from you. Like not like all these airline points where, I mean, if you forget to use for a year, it's gone, right? So so when people say on in Web3 and blockchain, you actually own your asset. I mean, these points also become your assets. And then people cannot stop you from trading or sharing with your friend, right? Typically, I mean, if you take a look at this airline, I was looking the other day on American Airlines, for example. If I want to give you 10,000 points, right, it will cost me like a few $100s. Even though I have like 1 million points on American Airlines, I can't give it to you. So now when you make it open and basically a consumer actually own this point and have that control, I think it will actually become really good because it might even, I would actually think it's become beneficial for the company as well, right? People think that if they make people spend more money to get all these points, they will get more revenue. But the thing is, if you make your customer love your brand so much because you allow them to do all these things and you have the freedom, right? You be like, hey, customer experience come first, right? And we figure out the revenue model. Then now I can share the point because you like, let's say you're going on a honeymoon and you shot like 10,000 points or 100,000 points. I just want to give it to you, right? Now, I may be really poor, I don't have money, or I have its points, right? Which actually at one point, I was in that position. I have millions of points from hotels, from airline, everything, but I have 0 in my bank account, right? So I can take, if I want to give someone my point, I could not, right? So it became a really bad experience for me. So I think that's one area that can be solved using basically on-chain loyalty points as well, right? And then of course there's all sorts of gamification that can be done. And I was just reading something about an hour ago where people now start having the same farming experience with brands, Web2 brands, right? And I forgot now actually. I was really sleepy when I read it, but So just for the audience who don't understand how it works for a lot of these chains or games now, there's a new trend now where you play to airdrop or you like do certain activities, right? So you can go farm, let's say on Manta Network, that just went live like 2-3 weeks ago. So you can go and do all these activities from on the testnet. You can go trade on their desk. You can do all these things and you earn all these points, right? And eventually you get airdrop of that token, which becomes an amount of money. Now, you can technically do something similar to brands as well, right? And for example, if you have a new drop, and especially with all these Italian brands that have all these seasonal items, right? So there's 2 types of products for those of you who don't know. There's basics, which are the items that always there, right? The color white, black, blue, and all these things. And then the seasonal stuff, which are typically more colorful or it's more suitable for like fall, spring, all these different seasons. So technically, a lot of these brands, they can produce a lot of supply for the fabric, for example, but they don't, right? Now, if you make it so that people have to go and farm and do all these different activities, for example, promote their brand on social media, right? Or maybe come up with a look based on the item from the brand. Now you become eligible for these drops, right? So the same concept can actually be applied as well. Also, it can be facilitated by using on-chain activities or whatever else, however they want to track it. Right. So I think that's why there's a lot of interesting concept that can be borrowed from what's going on right now in Web3 and bring to Web2.
Oh yeah, like gamification is definitely the part of it. I had in mind the topic about how it can save the management costs. There's an interesting research by KPMG, and they took like a couple of different loyalty programs, And they took the companies which has like other companies as an example who implemented loyalty programs on top of a chain. And what they found out that it changed the cost. So it became 15% more efficient just because it's just much less infrastructure to manage it. So, and another thing is if you allow this freedom of movement between the people, like, and allowing people to trade, I think it can even have the virality effect. Imagine that like in a lot of those communities, so let's say American Airlines, the one you mentioned, I think would create even groups on Reddit and Facebook where people will be like trading those coins.
That's what I used to do. Yeah, exactly. Basically, I used to trade passes, right? So I used to have all this, it's like a global, I forgot what it's called. It's like a global upgrade. So when you travel internationally, right, you can use it and you get a business class upgrade for free. So that was very hot on Reddit and on Craigslist and everywhere because there was no outlet for people to actually go and legitimately trade.
Yeah.
Right? Which become a risk because some people, like I had sometimes even on that pass, which totally is priced at around $700 to $800, right? I have to send the money first. And that person has to call American Airlines and book for me, right? What if that person decides to not do it and just run away because I found this on Craigslist?
We already have enough like online shopping scam where, for example, people are trading secondhand items or selling secondhand items, and eventually you never receive an item. So like they're looking for solutions who can, help fix that. And the same thing with ticketing, actually, like people can, can sell the same ticket several times to several different people. And there is no way to validate it. So the same with the loyalty points. If the companies enable trading, they could allow trade and actually even use in like interconnected systems. So let's say same VC or same holding owns American Airlines and they own like some sort of like shopping center network. They could allow same points to circulate without no additional development fees in both of the environments. So we can like literally allow the free market and allow people to trade and do all these sort of things. Cool. Let's go through the same exercise. So you want to build super simple loyalty program. Let's say you are talking with a shopping center in Indonesia, and that shopping center in Indonesia says, look, we are buying these cards right now, and people can use these cards as a loyalty point collection points. But, we are not satisfied with our solution. How much does it cost for us to build one, like a really simple one, where people just, their company, like the shopping center can come, integrate a couple of simple endpoints, so they will be able to issue points to people wallets. People will be able to check those points in the shopping center mobile app. And also the stores will be able to charge those points from the customers to give a discounts to their users. So in a way, those like tokens become like tradable because people can send them from one wallet to another. So we can already kind of have their internal tokenomics. But at the same time, it's just for that specific shopping center.
I mean, it's actually, if we specific with shopping center or that chain, it's actually quite simple because typically, especially more in Asia, they all use the same point of sales, right? So it's just a matter of you basically go and create this smart contract which allow you to mint the token. And then you just have to, simple logic, right? To go and mint it and then also accepting, right? So it's actually, it's very, very simple. I think the hardest part is to actually calculate on how many points should be given out or how much they are worth, right? And I think, well, actually, I wouldn't say it's difficult because they're already doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But now one thing they have to figure out is if the points do not expire, because now users have control of it, how does that work, right? Because I think that's the part that there are many more, and actually I don't even know a single more that points do not expire. There are certain states in the US where you cannot expire. Oh no, actually no, it's just gift card. Yeah, I think points, they all can expire, right? And there might be some credit card that say, hey, our points do not expire, right? But not, I think someone really need to do research on that part. But typically that's on the business side, right? On the technical side, it's actually very simple.
But technically as well, it's not as hard, it's not hard to make expiration. So let's say every time the new transaction happens, you can, so let's say that person issued some points. So let's say if they want to send them out, you basically measure how many tokens. You also can build up some token tagging solution, which will basically expire the specific tokens at specific time. Though if it becomes a free market, that's a bit risky. So if the token is tagged and you just sold that token to another person and that person does not use it, how to check the expiration time, how to just value. So I think in the end, it's just better to make it
all open. I mean, that's why people I think Vitalik and his co-founder have been talking about using colored coin, right? So bringing the concept of basically tagging, basically the origination of the token and all the transfer, but they all tag because they're all colored, right? So, I mean, I think there's a way to do it, but I think more important than that, I think businesses should actually change their mindset. And like you said, just make it open and see how things go from there, right? Because technically, if you give out a point, right, you expect them to use it. The only reason that you expire it is to create this urgency that, hey, it's going to expire tomorrow. I should go to the store and do something, right? But without, and then of course the second part is they want it to go off their book. So
actually, I have a solution for this. You can, it just idea popped up in my head. So what you could do, you can design your token as a chain. So if it's like token 1 and token 2 and token 3, if you issue 100 tokens, they will be like 100 tokens.
Yeah.
And each of the token, like I think the fractionality of this is a bit complicated, but it's basically becomes, and if the token was minted at the specific block because it's already in chain, you can check at which point of the timeline each token. And imagine that it's like a graph, and basically historically just at some point the end of the graph starts to be eaten from behind.
I think I have a simple solution. If you use ERC 1155, right? And then you basically have them issue it per day, and every day become a new ERC 1155. And because of the nature of the token, you can send multiple at the same time, right? So they all basically worth equally. But then when you do a transfer, you do a bar transfer of the 1155. I think that could work, right? Because I mean, the reason the ERC 1155 is for people to be able to send multiple assets at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that actually could work. I never thought about this before.
That's true. I love it. I love this conversation, honestly, because it came from just like talking to like brainstorming on solution.
Yeah.
But so I think we kind of have a good overview on like loyalty points on chain. Like it can be applicable to airlines, to shopping centers, to any online shopping, honestly. And what do you think about building just like a WordPress solution? Like, for example, the loyalty system for every shop on WordPress, on like every shop on Shopify.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. Yeah, I mean, we in some way we already have partial solution, right? I mean, we have the verification part. I think the issuing part is also simple, but yeah, I think we have to kind of sit down and write down all these different cases, like airline, all these things, and really study on how they work, right? For this case, there might actually be like a one size fit all.
I think it as well.
Yeah.
I think as well, actually. Cool. Do you want to talk about games?
Games. It's going to be interesting this year. Yeah. And I mean, for those of you who don't know, I do a lot of deal flows with VCs and founders, and I see quite a bit of activities popping up. And I mean, I think it's going to change a lot. So first of all, right? And statistically, even in Web2, only 2% of games actually make money, right? The rest, they hardly even break even. So the percentage of games failing is high already. Now it's come to Web3 where it's a super niche area. It's even worse, right? Majority of the Web3 games never even make it to the market. They never even make it to alpha, right? Because one really bad thing about Web3 gaming is that majority of the founders, they're not gamers. They have never developed a game before. They're like, hey, GameFi is taking up, let's do something, right? And that has to stop. And I think, and the thing is the VCs who are throwing money into the fire because they know that just because this person was doing this, right? Let's say a part of the game studio, but never really done it. But hey, they mint this NFT, pay some artists to come up with something really cool and then just sell it to people. And it's crazy, but it's definitely changing. another interesting thing that's only happened last week is also making people wake up a little bit and understand that you don't need that much money to like develop a good game. Power is that one use case, right? $7 million in 3 years, and within the first 5 days they made $200 million, right? And people love it, and people just still continue to play, and for a long time, I think. And they still only open early access only, right? They have not even officially launched the game, and they already made like, I think probably $300 million by now. Yeah. So comparing to some other game, I don't know if I should name these games, but there are games that have raised $70 million and by selling NFT in the last cycle, right? Yeah. And they still have not delivered the game. And they raised...
Let's go ahead and do the board of shame. Let's do the board of shame.
I mean, they got acquired by another studio which I think know how to develop games, right? But just the fact that they have 10 times the money, right? I think the team size also probably 10 times, but they still have not released the game. And I believe they raised in mid 2021, right? So basically pretty much about the same amount of time, much more money, and they still have not launched. So I think it's gonna really make people think like, okay, what the hell are these guys doing? And it's actually good when there's example like this where it really show that, because people complain all the time, right? That it's like, hey, we didn't have enough money to make it AAA and all these things. But I mean, why? Who cares if it's a AAA game? Because I think people kind of muddle up the definition a little bit. Like, just because the game looks really good and AAA quality doesn't mean it's AAA, right? Because AAA games, typically you spend tons of money on marketing.
Yeah. There is a guy in the YouTube about the game development. I think this is very, very useful content for everyone who is like planning to invest into games or overall like do stuff with the games. Mm-hmm. There is a guy. Are you familiar with the Simpson Hit and Run game?
Simpson Hit and Run.
Yeah, it's a very old first-person game where you basically play as a Homer Simpson, and you have to do. And
yes, I have seen that. Yes.
So this is a very old game. It's like 2000 something.
Yeah.
There is a guy in the YouTube who basically extracted all the old files and visuals. Mm-hmm. He used an AI to enhance those visuals to make them look more sharp. And he rebuilt all of that game in a couple of days from scratch. Because he didn't have the code. He just used the visuals. And he showed, because he was working on another game studios, mm-hmm. but he showed how fast you can build really nice games. And like, you should check it out on YouTube. I think people add just link in the bio.
Is it Dino, the guy?
Sorry?
What's the guy's name on YouTube?
Oh, I don't remember the name. I will check on the video. I was watching it as my side binge while coding. So, and that dude is he's extraordinary. He's like super fast. Mm-hmm. And there are like so many videos like in the YouTube where guys build games super fast. And like super nice game, because like Unreal Engine, Unity, like especially when you're creating the real world games, like the first person games, there are so many options to speed up, like so many libraries, so many extensions, like plugins, all those things to speed up the game development. So to build something for 2 years with that amount of money, however, you're preparing something that will blow everyone's mind, or you're just like planning to quickly cash out the money. And
the funny thing is they're raising again right now. It just blows my mind sometimes. Like it's crazy in Web3. People just throw money around. But anyway, I got completely sidetracked and went into that direction. But I think the key part in gaming, in Web3 gaming, like this year, is going to be how, I mean, first of all, people keep saying, right, it has to be a real game. I mean, that hopefully is like cement now that people need to, like, it's not just farming, right? And even with farming, that it has to be like fun farming, like maybe real farming sim or something. But another focus going to be how, I guess, what people call tokenomics, right? Like, how do you balance it to make it so that people who want to earn can earn, right? And the game is also sustainable somehow. And there are many different new models that people are experimenting with. Like, for example, a game like Genopets, which is also part of our portfolio, they separate out Web 2 and Web 3, right? So Web 3 part are basically for people who would go and walk and earn and crafting items and all these things. And then on the Web 2 side, people actually buy using in-app purchase automatically go and buy from Magic Eden, burn the NFT, it become item in game, and basically people who don't want to like spend time go walk and all this thing, they can buy, right? So maybe this model will work. Or the model like Seraph, where basically people have to get to like, I think level 60 first before they can even trade anything or mint anything, right? Because the idea is you need to first enjoy the game. And when you get to that point where you actually already enjoy the game, like, hey, I have all this really awesome item that I've been collecting. Maybe I can trade this down to people who maybe not as skilled, right? Or there's certain type of people who just want to max out their character from the very first step into the game, because they just want to enjoy the storyline instead of focusing on farming, leveling up, all these things, right? So there's definitely all these different concepts that people are playing around with, and it will be very, very important this year, because the moment there is one single model that works, where the token lasts for a long time and actually trending up instead of trending down to nothing, I mean, everyone will copy. So right now, there is not a single game that has token that like very well managed, and that's something I think gaming industry for Web3 is basically experimenting and hunting for.
But okay, so I think I want to contradict over here a little bit.
Okay.
And I think there is so much focus in the play to earn space, because it became play to earn space. People from like some developing markets were like joining the games because of like financial incentives. But you mentioned one really good point. First of all, we need to enjoy the game. So the biggest issues, and I really like when we design any product, you know how I'm super strict on breaking down problems, and I'm like super conservative until you make me believe in some of those ideas, because I think that's why we are mapping so good, because you're a crazy opportunist, and I'm like this annoying nagging dude who is just like, let's break this down and let's see if it really can work. So the main problem in the games is right now the assets trading and the aftermarket. So that's the main issue. I don't think the games, because the games as itself needs to be fun and bring like joy to people, and that's the value we're selling, like joy and maybe there's a little bit of addiction. so that joy is the main thing. So if we just solve the problem of monetization, because what it can do by just deploying the assets. So let's take Counter-Strike. I've played Counter-Strike when I was a kid, so it's most relatable for me. And you take a Counter-Strike and you have skins, and if you take those skins and you put them on blockchain and just basically make a royalty fees from everything what's happened, and you make this way more open market for everyone to trade and way more safer market, doesn't that just fix the issue like immediately? So the games can just focus.
It doesn't, right? Because yesterday I saw a research that showed, I think 76.8% of people in Web3 care the most about owning their own assets, right? So which play right along with what you're saying. But the thing is, the reason I think that is a problem is that, majority of people who play games, they don't actually care about assets. But when you have that kind of burden up there, this just means we're nowhere close to mainstream adoption, right? It's still people who care about all this like ownership of asset, which is not a solution to everything, because first of all, all this interoperability as well. Having your own character go across all these different games, that is great, right? But a lot of time it's also not practical, because there is not that one. And typically, actually, there was one company was trying to attempt this called The Horizon, right? They're based out from SF, I think. They're trying to come up with a 2D and 3D engine so that allow any games to cross over, right? So they have this like intermediate engine that can translate the models. So that if you, let's say you have a character in this style in this game, when you go through this engine, it becomes like more anime or whatnot. That's cool, but if it's only cosmetic, it's fine, right? Because it doesn't break the balance of the game. The moment it starts breaking the balance of the game, it becomes problematic, because the designer of the game designed it a certain way, and then all of a sudden you have all these foreign objects that are coming in, right? So if it's a single player experience, it's actually much easier, because then you just ruin your own experience if you do something wrong. But when it becomes competitive with PvP, right, player versus player, it could kill the game completely, because all of a sudden you have these people who are like super powerful and no one can beat them, right? So there needs to be a balance on on what interoperability really mean, and also ownership. What does ownership of asset really means? And I talked to my friend who's a founder of Gacha Monster. So his new game is Parkland, right? So for him, his wish is to just be able to have his Pokemon, for example, that he level up and he collect all these items, accessories for the Pokemon, right? To be able to just keep that as collected as memory. Because if that game goes away, and that game he also helped develop, right? If that game go offline, it's gone forever, right? I mean, best case, you basically can take a screenshot and save what it used to look like. So there's that for just memory, and maybe, I mean, he can even resell it or whatnot. But I think in the end, the game still has to be fun. Otherwise, you're just gonna still have all this niche of Web3 gamers, right? They're not even gamers in Web3, and they will never expand because it really comes down on who do you tailor this towards. And that's why at the Tokyo Game Show last year, Anne from IVS, Crypto, IVCs, right, basically declared that play to earn is dead. And the reason she said play to earn is dead is not because people cannot earn from games. It's because there should be a way to classify on what kind of value people provide to the game, right? And it comes down to UGC. So, and even for people, let's say for Axie Infinity case where people just want to farm their tokens, right? What kind of value do you think they bring, right? So they actually bring the value to just be in the game. And they learn how to play better so that they become more competitive, so that more people can go and match and play against them, right? You don't want to have basically go into a game and there's no one playing, so you cannot match with anyone else, right? Or maybe you cannot match against people who don't have the level of skills that you can actually play against because you're too weak or you're too strong, right? So even for that case, for people who play Axie Infinity every day, they provide value by provide opportunity for other people to match with them. Okay, so but then how does that compare to, let's say, people who work on some user-generated content? Let's say build a new map for Axie, build new Axis work, maybe even build a new game using the same NFT, right? So those people who contribute more value to the game or to the ecosystem probably should get paid more, right? Because the rest of the people also have more opportunity to earn, right? Or have more opportunity to play and enjoy the game. So that I think there has to be a way to really measure the level of contribution.
Describing it like a complex metaverse. Like, for example, we've talked with one of our current clients about putting like a billboards in a racing game.
Yeah.
So if someone can, I don't know, like subsidize and like create sort of like farming solution in that game, for example, that you can create arts or you can just maintain billboards or in a way, or just allow people to fund the development of the game further or fund scaling the development. So that creates internal economy.
Yep.
I think what you're talking about is like economics of the game, which is like way more complex topic than just solving like scam issues, like, because I think that we need to go like simple steps first to solve the complex step. Like,
I don't know if it's simple anymore in gaming, right? Because it's the industry has gone towards this direction, and now the earning part becomes a staple, right? Because everyone basically say, "Hey, you need to value my time. I've been in this game playing for some time, and then contribute to the ecosystem, right?" Everyone, if there's no element of earning, it will not attract the certain type of users, right? Who it's just like you said, there's many things that need to be undone. Right? And gaming is one of those areas where people should not expect to be able to earn, right? They should first, enjoy the game. Then at some point, if there's an opportunity to earn because they actually contribute and add value to the ecosystem, then they're right, but then it becomes much more complex. And the metaverse case is actually an interesting case, right? Because anyone can, let's say, go and build their own new island or game inside another game, right? And technically they can go and build an economy around that as well, right? So that if people come and help me build this island, and let's say I can monetize it because, hey, it become this attraction. Let's say I'm building a theme park and it's VR, right? It's like kick-ass theme park where people just come and willing to pay $10 to spend 2 hours per day, right? And then you can collect all those revenues and then basically distribute that to whoever basically contribute and help building it out. So I think that model could work, and then people just need to be creative on it. It's just like you, instead of building it I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like in real world, right? When you start an island, what is it? It's basically you starting a company, and when you have people come in, you essentially giving out share for people who, now they're not your employee, but they're like almost your co-founders, right? So the more you participate, the more part of the pie you earn, and then whenever you generate revenue, then it gets distributed. I think this model could work well, and it may, and I think if there's a really good game engine, like for example with Unreal and Fortnite, right? With the Fortnite game engine now allow people to easy, I mean not easy, but still easier to create games that good looking, good mechanics, right? But it's easier, but you still have to come up with basically like how do you differentiate yourself from other games, right?
Yeah.
Because if it become easier for everyone to create, there's going to be millions of these mini games now out there, and it's going to become harder and harder to attract attention and make money. So,
and like you know what word I should use, like saturation is also an issue, because like when you need a complex filtering mechanism, so how do you introduce new good games, like how do you filter out? So I think it would become like some sort of like social media content algorithm to kind of like allow people to like experience those games, and if it doesn't click, we just put them into graveyard.
The interesting part about Web3 game as well is every game are expected to last for a long time because there's a token behind it, right? Now in Web2 games, it typically ends. I mean, even like very famous game sometimes lasts only a month on YouTube and no one talk about them anymore, right? Because people actually completed the game. They really enjoy it. They love it, but they're not going to go play it 50 times unless you're like a speed runner or something. And that's why there's all these different genre. Like there's Metroidvania, right? So basically Metroid plus Castlevania. There's tons of these games with that genre, and that's because people finish the game and then they're like, oh, there's another game that's similar, but maybe different character, different style, different gameplay. So they keep playing and they keep continuing to buy more games, right? And that's why in a country like Japan, where I think their annual gaming revenue is like $22 billion or something for just Japan, right? And because the people enjoy certain experience and they just look for something that's slightly different, maybe different IP, maybe different weapons, even different weapons actually get people to come and play the game again, right? I was watching, there's a game.
But that's where blockchain can be really handy, like transitioning from one game to another. If we are able to build in this, like shared ecosystem of asset items. So let's say if people, because usually people pick games based on category. So if it's either like RPG, strategic, like first-person shooters, these sort of things. So if you can build like a shared system where like companies can share.
I mean, cosmetic-wise, it makes sense. Cosmetic definitely makes sense, but even let's say if you have different sword, different kind of weapons, right? When you go to another game, there's no animation for it, right? Yeah. For swinging this massive sword, there's no animation for it because let's say if another game only has small sword, right? The speed is much faster. All of a sudden you have this massive sword and you still swing it like nothing because you play Thor or something, or like, but in the future with AI solution, right? I think this is where AI can really come in, because if the AI is smart enough to recognize that, hey, this asset, let's say this great sword with weight, let's say, I don't know, 20 kilograms, right? Because of that, it automatically adjusts the speed of the swing, right? And the reach and all these things. And technically, it could also be done by human, right? So so now all of a sudden you have these universal parameters where you don't just come up with a sword, you also have to define the dimension, the weight, and all these different abilities, all accessories, anything that come with it, right? Then it could work, because then when they get to another game, they're like, oh, okay, it's weight 20 kilograms instead of 1 kilogram, so now it should be this. But then that really makes you think way ahead of like what might come. But if you have an AI solution where it understands that, okay, now if this asset of certain properties enter into this game, how should it react? And it continues to learn and learn and learn, and I think it also can generate asset to go on top of the asset. It maybe even creates something that like better match, right? Maybe adjust the color or this thing to like match with your costume. So I think eventually it will be doable. Whether it makes sense or not, I don't know.
But what you're pointing to is again a reference system.
Yeah,
You are
it's reference and also like a self-learning system. It must keep learning by itself, right? Because if it's a reference system where there are things that are predictable, because you have all these well-known parameters, right? But if the game lasts for a long time, and let's say the developer goes away, if it's truly decentralized game where servers are run by individuals, right? I mean, of course, there's going to be a community of developers that keep the game running and keep making it better. But what if that isn't, right? What if it can really be governed by AI and the AI essentially keep improving the games? So there are, of course, in games, the difficulties level, right? You can select different difficulty. Okay. And so that's one way. But what if I already reached the max and I love the game, but I want it to be more difficult? How does that work? So AI could come in and help with that, so that maybe we even create a brand new map, right? It analyzes how people do things, how people behave, and people give feedback, and it's like, hey, okay, now basically people already explore everything. What if it generates a new map automatically based on whatever like it learns from user behaviors, right? And maybe it learned about all the different bosses, about the different monster, and now it will create this region. What should this monster look like? How should they behave, right? So it's gonna be quite interesting. And people keep saying that with AI, people could lose their job. I mean, if the AI can do all these things, maybe some developer will actually lose their job.
Yeah, I think we will find some more interesting stuff to do, because I think we just evolved together with technology. But I want to go back a little bit to the referencing system, because this is really interesting, because that's how interconnection can work. And this is interesting for me from as a developer. So it's not hard to build databases. Let's say you take all of the games which were built until this point, and you categorize them, label them, and then just put them into the database. And each item has a different set of qualities and also accessibility. So let's say you're playing Genshin and you're moving towards, I don't know, another game, which is maybe a little bit different design, but you're at level 1 because you're just starting to build that game. So maybe you can own that asset. If that asset would be on the blockchain, you can own it, but you won't be able to equip it. So I think what could be really helpful for blockchain games to start thinking about, especially those companies who are active, about thinking about interconnecting experience through another games with their tokens. So like collaborating. So I think part of what we are thinking about doing in Saakuru Labs, because we are boarding more and more of these games, what could really help those games to grow? And I think we are kind of like trying to do it through the Tomo one, is allowing a global
skill tree
system. Like a global skill tree through the gamification, so you can apply the same logic. And of course for the assets and the game assets, because it's like just so many different game engines and different stuff that can be, so that asset might not be useful in one game, but if let's say if it's a similar game built on the same shared ecosystem, that can be very useful. And also another thing, what shared ecosystem can do, and of course this is for the game companies as well, shared ecosystem can allow aftermarket after you finish the game, because that's as well an issue. That's the same issue when you like release the ticket, because there is, after the event is done, there is no more reactivation of the user. The same thing in a game. After you finish the game, you're just like, like I've spent 2 or 3 weekends in a row just like playing Harry Potter Legacy, and I absolutely enjoy the game. But all that time it's gone. I would be able to like sell specific assets. So let's say there is another magical game, and maybe the monsters I collected can interconnect, or some in-game assets could interconnect through some sort of shared siloed ecosystem of items. That could help games to even kick off. So let's say you have one game which is already live and super popular, and a new game is launching. And what you could tell, look, guys, you can try to play with the same assets already on this game. You don't need, you will be able to use them, and that will allow to expand the ecosystem and create like a shared ecosystem of value, And I'm not a big believer on like focusing on play to earn aspect, and I think we both agree on these things. I think that's actually shifting the focus from actual gameplay to like the earning mechanism. And I think eventually the game can generate enough value to the ecosystem when it's fun by its design, and when the game developers understands how to monetize it well, and it's part of the value sharing mechanism and value sharing future. Because you can have the same game and just put all the money in your pocket. So the value sharing and the asset sharing only is applicable to the owners of the company and also to the developers who develop the game, because they take money from the people who want to play this game and they share the value.
Yeah. I mean, there's a new trend now as well with people buying nodes, right? Like basically people launch, let's say L2 on Outlet, and you buy all these nodes, like Marius one, right? And then Exceed is another one. There's quite a few of these where, like for Exceed, for example, their main revenue will come from advertisement, right? So, and then whoever own the node will get paid in, I think, USDC. So there's that model where they essentially have people go mine advertisement, right? So, which is similar to the mobile gaming right now anyway. But mobile gaming right now, you don't own the asset, you don't get paid. And for that, now for Exceed, all these different games, they actually purchase a lot of old games, right? The right to old game and convert it and add a bunch of ads. And then they collect the ad and distribute. So there's that model, which kind of makes sense, right? But I don't know how well it will do. And actually, I mean, let me correct myself. Even Sega is bringing in all these old retro games because they're the new younger generation that have not seen these games before, right? And we got to the point now where like really, really good graphics no longer matter as much. It's more of the game design, the gameplay, and the experience. And that's why people are able to bring all these older games back. That's why there's a lot of remake. There's a lot of, what's it called? They just make the graphic looks a little bit better, right? So, I mean, that model could work. And I don't know. And I predicted that it would not work, but who knows? There's a lot of people who purchase a lot of nodes. I think they were selling 10,000 earlier.
That's really cool. So I think we have a lot of content. We overviewed three potential markets where blockchain companies can be created and where the enterprises can focus on solving the exact issues. There are many, many more. So we haven't touched NFT ticketing, which I think we will even dedicate a separate podcast to it. We talked about games. We talked about loyalty programs. And talked about education. So to finalize, Jack, maybe you can share how Saakuru Labs can help any company to launch their product very, very quickly with very low cost and plug in their product to the blockchain.
Sure. So again, just to remind people who don't know about Saakuru Labs, right? We're basically a consumer-focused social layer 2 on top of Oasis. And of course, our chain has no gas fee. We also have a suite of products. Like we have a lot of products because we keep discovering that no other products out there can really satisfy our requirements. So we build it for security, for many things. So for example, if you have a game studio and you want to launch a mobile game and you want to start integrating Web3, we can help you with that. You can use our SDK, and I mean, within like a day, you basically have embedded crypto wallets supporting 16 different chains, right? So it cut down a lot of time, and because these are also like, I mean, this is what my thing as well. You should if you're a game studio, you should focus more on the game, right? And working on like a fancy UI for wallet, all these things. I mean, let the SDK take care of it. That's why we build it in such a way that you don't just have SDK to connect to the blockchain. We give you the full UI. You have on-ramp, off-ramp, swap, and all these things so that you don't have to worry about it. So, I mean, cut down time. And if you want to provide a much better experience for your users, I mean, eliminate the gas fee. Let us handle it, right? Use our chain. And if you're a game studio, we also provide quite a large amount of grant money as well, right? So the grant can cover many different areas, from even helping you with creating your LP, right? Because you have to bootstrap your LP as well. So, I mean, for anyone who is interested, definitely, you can definitely contact me. You can find my information on our website. I think there's LinkedIn, there's Twitter, and all those are there. And yeah, I mean, and another thing is, I would say, don't be afraid. This is the year to experiment, right? And I think we got to the point now we can really help any company experiment very quickly. Let's say you want to focus on CRM, you want to do certification, all these things. I mean, you can try out the experience in like 1 or 2 weeks, right? And then that's when I think I would encourage any company to first try out the prototype and then really go back and think, okay, these are the area where you can really improve, whether user experience, efficiency, or just even innovate on new ideas based on what you have tried. But if you don't try, you just don't know, right? Especially, again, the point is the market talk about how people make money and all these things. That doesn't matter as much for business, right? It's more of like how Web3 can really help change the business.
Yeah. And as a developer, I can tell you we have built a bunch of stuff in the last 2 years. So all of that is very stable and very ready for being plugged into your product. Though that opened up our arms to consulting and to helping companies with different development needs, especially when it comes to Web3 developers. This is one of the major blockers, which we hear from the companies that they are afraid that they don't find developers. The developers are super expensive. They actually don't even know how to make their very first step towards the integration. So because one of our goals is to increase the adoption of our product suite. So we provide the consulting services, how to do it, how to maximize the profit and the value from the integrating blockchain. And after that, we provide also the full product suite to ensure that you're plugging in that with the lowest cost and with the best user experience possible.
Yeah, and another thing I want to touch on, actually, sorry. I mean, when you come into our ecosystem, right, we take quite a different approach. We actually don't, like I mentioned, like we do give out grant, but we don't just give you money. We get really, really involved, right, with strategy, with everything, marketing, PR. We help fundraise and all these things. So I think we have a quite an awesome ecosystem. And very welcoming to anyone who really want to try. Anyway, just want to add that part.
Cool. Actually, we went from, I think this is a really important thing. We went from, when did we launch? Like Saakuru blockchain, like 6-7 months ago?
January 2023.
Okay, so like a year ago already. Yeah?
Yes.
Look like that. So, and we went from 0 to 170,000 daily transactions. So right now, actually, every day we have around 170,000 transactions happening. But though we have a capacity, and that 170,000 represents just like less than 1% of everything what our solutions are capable of. So we are looking forward to all those brave people who want to experiment and make their business way more modern and way more profitable to contact us. And we're going to leave the information in the video description as well, how to contact us, what are the first steps, because it's really easy and we make sure that journey is enjoyable and a good learning experience anyway. So to end this video, Jack, I want to thank you very much for your time. I hope that the next time we will have the black background, both of us.
Should it be black or it can be a different color?
You can. What color would you choose?
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, next time will be better for me. I'm basically sitting in a garage. So back to old school startup style.
That's very normal experience for a startup owner. So I wanted to thank you, everyone, also the listeners. I hope that was valuable. So feel free to actually go ahead and comment and subscribe, and also comment the questions. What do you want us to talk about next time? Because we can adjust the content towards your ideas and towards your questions. And also make sure you social all of our social media, because we share additional valuable content pieces like formative shorts, tips how to secure your crypto assets, tips how to make business on blockchain, tips how to find a good profitable play to earn games, and overall just everything what allows companies and users to profit from the blockchain. And just looking forward to the next podcast.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you very much. And have a good day, guys. Thank you, Jack.
All right. Bye, everyone.